Happy holidays, everybody. Hope you all had a very Merry Christmas. Getting ready for 2020. We got one more episode of the Fantasy Forecheck brought to you by the Ram 1500 Sport. Andy McNamara alongside Nick Alberga with your fantasy hockey goodness, waiver wire pickups, sleepers, and how to win some money. Hey, going into the new year, Nick, right? Win some money in the Sportsnet.
Pay for those gifts.
Absolutely. Fantasy hockey pool brought to you by Ram. So on today's show, we'll go through the schedule manipulation. Right, still in that holiday mode, but there are some four-game teams out there. Again, we'll get to our sleeper picks and roll through all that, and as well as some of the top storylines. But with the holiday theme, a Boxing Day crease sale. We're going shopping now.
A bonanza.
A bonanza.
I love it.
A bonanza.
Anybody who plays fantasy hockey, you're always looking for that next hot thing in between the pipes, and you want the solid nature, a guy who's consistent, and certainly some guys I think we got to target right now. And I hate the fact that, I started off my 20 fantasy thoughts this week with, a thought on Philipp Grubauer. There seems to be a misconception out there that Pavel Francouz is the number one goaltender there, or starting to vie for that position. I don't buy it at all. Philipp Grubauer is a guy I'm buying that stock. Full-time, 24/7, 365 right now. I think Colorado is healthy too. Cale Makar comes back last week. I think the Avalanche are going to go on quite a run. So I'm all over Philipp Grubauer. I think you can buy low on that file right now. Same goes for the Islanders goaltending situation when it comes to Thomas Greiss and Semyon Varlamov. That team has struggled to prevent goals lately. They're one of the stingiest teams in the NHL defensively speaking. So I'd be all over, buying low on those two guys. I think to an extent in Carolina as well, namely Peter Mrazek has had his struggles as of late. Another stingy defensive team. I'm buying on that file. And last but not least, I wanted to pimp Jonas Korpisalo. First year as a starter here in the NHL with the Columbus Blue Jackets. They lose Bobrovsky. Korpisalo has quietly been very, very solid for John Tortorella's Jackets, so I'm buying on that file too.
Yeah, he had a nice start to the year, cooled a little, but is now certainly back. Injury replacements, Nick. We know that's a big thing, right? We look at Jeff Skinner, Krug, McAvoy. There's a whole bunch of situations we can go to.
Yeah, so we'll start in Buffalo and replacements for Jeff Skinner. And it's unfortunate because, again, he lost his winger position with Jack Eichel on the top line to Victor Olofsson. The rookie's been fantastic this year. So Skinner was dropped to line 2 for the most part. He struggled. Last little while, he's been much better. And just a tough time to get injured for him as he started to play some better hockey. He'll be out 3 to 4 weeks, as we know, with an upper body injury. I think right away, internally, you're looking at Marcus Johansson comes over in the offseason. He gets PP1 elevation. He's going to move up the lineup into a top 6 role, playing a bit in the third line, the second line. They've been sprinkling him around. Buffalo's a team who needs to start winning hockey games very, very soon. And I think Johansson is a prime candidate of a guy who can start filling the net, get some points for you, some exposure to Jack Eichel and Rasmus Dahlin. So I think you got to be all over that. Externally, if you don't want to go to Buffalo, I think you got to look at Andre Palat. He's in a top 6 look right now with Tampa. Zach Hyman's been money in the bank with Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews. Hyman's playing fantastic hockey right now. And Zach Parise, another sneaky look on the Minnesota Wild. So lucky for all, you lose Jeff Skinner, but there's a lot of value right now, I would say, in the waiver wire when it comes to wingers. Andy.
Yeah, you can pop in a couple of those guys. Hyman, especially in that multi-category situation as well. Yeah, really good.
Why don't we take a look as well, sorry to interrupt, on the back end with Krug and McAvoy. You referenced those injuries. Right away, Matt Grzelcyk comes to mind. That's the internal replacement, certainly, and he has stepped up. Krug and McAvoy have both missed time various moments in this season, and Grzelcyk's a guy who can elevate into the lineup. Into PP1, you get that exposure to the perfection line. You got to be all over that when you're the lone defenseman. So I like that a lot. Probably the first guy I would go after if you're replacing Krug or McAvoy. Then you look at Nate Schmidt with Vegas. He's been providing as of late. Nick Leddy with the New York Islanders. And Dennis Gilbert, a rookie with the Chicago Blackhawks. Small sample size, offering penalty minutes, hits. I think you have to take a flyer on that if you need a defenseman, especially if you have Krug or McAvoy. Why not? What's the worst that can happen? Especially in the back end this time of year, it's going to be tough to find long-term fixtures.
It's a nice under-the-radar play, and that's where you look at, and even if it's just for a shorter period of time, you ride the hot hand.
Exactly.
And then stops being hot when it cools. You go in a different direction.
And that's exactly the strategy I do take when I play daily fantasy hockey, is just ride the hot hand. Especially because this time of year, you're not going to find a guy who's going to be a long-term fixture on your roster for the balance of the season, right?
Right. And now let's look at the schedule manipulation. Last week during the Christmas break, no 4-game schedules. This week we have 4 teams that play 4 games and a couple with 2 as well. So when you're looking, again, strategy-wise, it's real simple, Nick. You play more games, there's more chances for fantasy points.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think you look at the upcoming schedule, 47 games, most of them taking place, by the way, on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Of course, the January 1 game in the Cotton Bowl, that should be a lot of fun to watch. But Dallas, LA, Vancouver, you want to stay away from those teams, just 2 games as you mentioned. And the 4-game teams, Florida, Pittsburgh, San Jose, and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Guys you want to look at from a waiver perspective, Jared McCann, I like him a lot. Contract year, Alex Galchenyuk. Is he starting to wake up? The guy's sniffing a new contract. I think in the second half you have to take a look, especially in daily fantasy, and he's very attainable right now. In Florida, we talked about this a couple weeks back, Noel Acciari, Brett Conley, Kevin LeBanc, and Barclay Goodrow, former Brampton Battalion. You can look at those 2 guys on San Jose. And Palat, Anthony Cirelli centering the second line, Stamkos on his wing. A lot of value there. I think in terms of the Sportsnet fantasy hockey pool in 4-game weeks, you want to look at Malkin, Letang. Tristan Jarry is a guy you're going to talk about in moments. 2-point value. I mean, that's huge in a cap system in a 30-point league. As we're talking about in the Sportsnet fantasy hockey pool. I like Barkov. I like Huberdeau. I'm going to RAM-capable pick in mere moments. Brent Burns. And Andre Vasilevsky, Victor Hedman at 2. There's so much value for these 4 teams who have 4-game weeks. You got to be all over it.
Yeah, you go with the big hitters, right? You go with the guys who can produce in those 4-game weeks, obviously an advantage. Before we get to our RAM-capable picks in the Sportsnet fantasy hockey pool, it's the end of the year, end of the decade, so we're going to go over our fantasy hockey players of the season to date. So from the start of the year to now, to finish off the year, let us know yours. Put it below in the comment section. Hit us up on Twitter as well. But let's begin with forward. And I'm going to go, it's not Connor McDavid. It's not Nathan McKinnon. It's not Leon Draisaitl. It's to Boston. David Pastrnak, the #1 fantasy ranked player in Yahoo leagues. He's a guy where, not that you underrate him in the sense where you don't realize he's an excellent player, which you do, just doesn't have necessarily the name appeal or the recognition like those other players that I mentioned. For David Pastrnak, just look at what he's done. He's on pace for his first 100-point season, and he just keeps producing. And the Bruins, even though there's been some struggles as of late, are still one of the best teams in the league. I'm loving David Pastrnak.
Nothing wrong with that. I like that, and by far, I mean, that is the best line in hockey, the perfection line right now in Boston. I had to go with Connor McDavid.
Sure.
I think you look at this calendar year, he's been great, but I think there's even another couple levels to go. Around
which is scary.
It's very scary. Yeah. Around 80 games, around 120 points, .60. In terms of the percentage of what he's bringing in terms of value in fantasy hockey, and it's just the sky is honestly the limit when it comes to Connor McDavid. So for me, he was an easy pick because I just think he's above and beyond any fantasy player out there, and a reason why he'll be the first overall draft pick in fantasy hockey for the next decade, in my opinion.
To the blue line. We could try to get cute here, Nick. We could try to say, oh, maybe this guy. There is, without a shadow of a doubt, it is John Carlson. Yes. Not just because he's the #1 ranked fantasy player, defenseman, but the 5th overall ranked fantasy player, period. It's not even close. With the Capitals, it's John Carlson and then everybody else.
Yeah, and I do think John Carlson has sort of been a passing of the baton from Brent Burns, who's been one of the top offensive defensemen in the NHL for the last 5-10 years. Certainly, John Carlson's been outstanding, and it's sort of been unique and fun to watch his development in the NHL. I actually covered him in the Ontario Hockey League with the London Knights, and a guy not highly publicized, certainly on a team that featured, at the end there with John Tavares and, guys that ilk, Michael Del Zotto. There's a lot of talent on that roster. Lost in the flux was John Carlson, what he brought to the table. Great drafting, clearly by the Washington Capitals. This guy is an absolute beast, not only in fantasy hockey, on the ice as well in reality. The front runner by far to win the Norris Trophy, it's just so difficult to maybe eclipse the century mark in points by a defenseman. We've documented it throughout this season, the last 30 years. I think it's happened like once or twice. Like he's on an insane run, and I think you look at this calendar year, the domination has been full force the last 12 months.
Yeah, we're in full agreement there. Yeah. In between the pipes, my fantasy goaltender of the year, going to Winnipeg, Connor Hellebuck. And you look at what he's done, one of the top point producers in fantasy for goaltenders. He's somebody where, through the ups and downs of this Jets season, has been a goalie that you can rely on, you can pot in, you can just say, okay, listen, he's got 3 shutouts on the year, and he's got a 20-point fantasy lead in Yahoo leagues amongst the second best goaltender. So Connor Hellebuck for me.
He's been fantastic. I wrote about this in my 20 fantasy thoughts this week. Could fatigue be setting in when it came to Hellebuck? 4 of his last 6 starts, he surrendered 4 or more goals. But again, every goalie goes through the blips of a long, NHL season. So take that with a grain of salt. I think you're totally right. He's got to be the front runner right now at the halfway point for the Vezina Trophy. Hellebuck's been outstanding. For my goalie of the year, I'm going to go with Jordan Binnington and the St. Louis Blues. It's about a year ago now that he came up to the National Hockey League. He's 42-11-5 in the regular season.
Stop.
Since, January 5th, I believe, is when he was recalled. He has been out of this world. The numbers are unbelievable. When you look at it from a Sportsnet fantasy hockey pool perspective, all he does is win, get shutouts. He's pretty much your guy. So it's pretty simple for me to go with Jordan Binnington as my fantasy hockey goalie of the year, which I think is not expected because Andre Vasilevsky, of course, won the Vezina last year. But it's pretty simple for me to select Jordan Winnington.
So Winnington, yeah, look at this guy.
Boom.
There he is. Put it in the comment section below. Who are your fantasy hockey players of the year? Let us know. You can hit us up on Twitter as well at AndyMC81 at the Gold Muzzy. Now, Nick, you've been teasing this. This is how you win some money, folks. Okay? This is how we take care of you. The Ram Capable Picks. That's where you double up your fantasy points in the Sportsnet Fantasy Hockey Pool. So here is the format. What you do is there's 6 forwards, 4 defensemen, 2 goalies. You have 30 points to work with, and the value is 1 to 4 points per player. Then you put the Ram Capable tag on one, and you double your fantasy points on that particular player. So that's how it works. And this show, the Fantasy Forecheck, is brought to you by the Canadian exclusive Ram 1500 Sport. This full-size pickup gives Canadians exceptional capability under the hood, advanced technology inside, and impeccable styling throughout. It's the Ram 1500 Sport, and it's designed for life in the North. All right, Nick, let's go. Ram Capable, pick your forward. Who do you have?
Lots of value in Florida, a place I'd rather be right now because it's much warmer.
Indeed.
And
Yes.
speaking of warm, the Florida Panthers, in terms of providing offense, really, really hot. I would still stay away from Sergei Bobrovsky for the time being, but Jonathan Huberdeau, his 3-point value in the Sportsnet Fantasy Hockey Pool, I have to Ram Capable pick him. A 4-game week, as you know, for the Florida Panthers. Quietly, I would say he's a top 10 producer in points right now in the National Hockey League. So I'm going with Jonathan Huberdeau. Who do you got?
I'll do Austin Matthews. That old Maple Leafs team has been scoring in bunches since the coaching
Insane.
change. Austin Matthews on Saturday, a couple goals over his last 6. He's averaging 18 plus fantasy points. This is the type of production we were waiting and hoping for out of Austin Matthews this year. They've got rid of Mike Babcock. Whatever's changed, it's working. Austin Matthews, you talk about value, also a 3-point player, so I'll double up on that.
That line in general, I think you have to be all over from a daily fantasy perspective. With Zach Hyman, the value there in terms of the Sportsnet Fantasy Hockey Pool, maybe you think about that, and Mitch Marner, the chemistry is building by the game. So you're right in bringing that up. Let's go to the back end.
Yeah, what do you got?
Chris Letang of the Pittsburgh Penguins, a 4-game week. I still question this guy if he can stay healthy for a full 82-game slate, but when he is healthy and the exposure to Evgeny Malkin and Jake Gensel up front, Pittsburgh, Mike Sullivan's done a tremendous job. To be without Sidney Crosby for this long and to be this successful, and again, Tristan Jarry's a guy, again, we're teasing that you're about to bring up, has been exceptional. This team continues to win hockey games. I think I'm going with Chris Letang here. Almost a point per game player. The exposure to the guys I just mentioned, it's pretty simple in terms of value there.
Yeah, I love that pick, but I'm going to go to the Blues. Alex Pietrangelo. The last week, there's been no fantasy defenseman hotter with more points than Pietrangelo. You look at what he's been doing all season long, solid all year long, but he's averaged over 20 fantasy points in his last 3. 20 fantasy points over that last 3. I wanted to say it twice. 3 goals, 3 assists, 14 shots on net, 5 block shots over that stretch. And value, this is the theme of the week, value, 2 points in the Sportsnet Fantasy Hockey Pool. Come on now.
Yeah, you're right. And in general, I think in the second half, folks, if you're out there on the waiver wire, you got to target guys. I know he's not on the waiver wire, but in contract years, Alex Pietrangelo, his price tag continues to go through the roof. Mike Hoffman's another guy with the Florida Panthers I like. Chris Kreider, he's going to be dealt likely by the New York Rangers. Just value across the board. In between the pipes, I know he's been struggling, but I have to go with Frederik Andersen. This Maple Leafs team is on fire. They're 12-4-1 as we speak under Sheldon Keefe.
A lot of point and wins.
6-0-1. Let's not forget in the Sportsnet Fantasy Hockey Pool, there's no goals against, there's no save percentage, all about wins and shutouts. So I think there is value. 3-game week. They're at Minnesota, at Winnipeg, and home to the New York Islanders, and they're 6-0-1 in the last 7. So I'm going to Ram capable pick Frederik Andersen.
And I'll go, you mentioned him before with the Pittsburgh Penguins, Tristan Jarry. I went with him last week. I can't get away from him.
Yeah.
I can't. He's 2 points.
It's valuable.
Nick, he's 2 points. You get double the fantasy points, put the Ram capable tag on him. And just in real life hockey, fantasy pool, if he's probably not available on your waiver wire now, but if he is, still around probably 25-30% of fantasy leagues have not picked him up.
Yeah.
So you get him still a 1.87 goals against, 939 save percentage. Those are video game easy numbers. Like, you just have to keep going back to Tristan Jarry. Has won his past 5 starts. Just wins hockey games.
I would say he's the closest thing to Jordan Binnington this year. Not on the same scale, but I think considering last offseason, Pittsburgh certainly had his name out there in the trade market, and nobody, and I mean nobody, was interested in Tristan Jarry. They wanted to deal him, obviously, because they have Casey DeSmith, who can be a reputable backup in this league. And, next thing you know, Jerry is basically stealing this. He hasn't even basically, he's stolen the starting job from Matt Murray, who has 2 Stanley Cups at the age of 25. So this guy's got sub, 2 ERA right now. Like, it's out of this world what he's doing.
It's absolutely wild. And for any other fantasy hockey information, make sure you're following Nick at The Golden Muzzy, myself at AndyMC81. Let us know if you have any questions. We want to know, again, your fantasy hockey players of the year. Comment section below on Twitter at AndyMC81, at The Golden Muzzy. Happy New Year, everybody. We'll see you in 2020.
Boom.